Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wahid podcast. I'm your host, Ifat Syed, and welcome to another week. So, today we have a special guest with us. Her name is Sahar El Refai, and she is a petroleum engineer and she also is a personal trainer. So, she does two jobs, which is pretty intense, two pretty intense jobs in one day. And I don't know, we're going to talk to her about how she manages to do that and a lot more. So stay tuned. So Sahar, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. Where shall I begin? So, pretty much, I consider myself international, just because I am half Egyptian, half American, and I've lived here for 22 years. So some people say I'm Qatari as well, I've loved living here for a long time, and throughout the first few years of my life here, I was between here in the States for a long time because my dad had to move here for work. So I was pretty much, traveling back and forth with my siblings to the States and here. Especially that back then, it was just sort of like the Sheraton and the Corniche and one mall. So, summers were pretty much definitely out of town. But it was beautiful, watching the country grow into something incredible. Every year, it looks like you're living in a different country. So I went to school here. I went to different schools. I went to QIS for a while, then Shweifat. There was a year in between where I went to the Egyptian school as well. And then I went to Texas A&M, became an Aggie, part of the Aggie family. And then once I graduated, I guess that's when I shifted sort of my interests a little bit to invest more in my passion rather than just, the kind of 8-to-5 job that I was meant to do after you graduate kind of thing. So basically, I decided that, there's more to it than just working from 8 to 5, something that you sort of had to do because, I love engineering, but it's not a passion. Sports has always been part of my life since I was a kid. I played gymnastics professionally. I played squash professionally as well. And I reached the Squash Federation. I was supposed to represent the country at some point in my life. Yeah.
I got there. You were supposed to.
Wow. Yeah. So I was going to represent them here back then, but, that was a long time ago. But then I was the only girl in the country pretty much playing squash. And I had my own trainer and everything, reaching that level. But then because I was the only girl, and there were a lot of Qatari kids that were coming in and they needed trainers. And back then it wasn't such a famous sport yet. So they didn't have enough people to basically cover all those kids and, train them to become professional squash players and all that. So they kind of took my trainer away and they're like, you're the only girl. So, we kind of have to take your trainer to train these kids and whatever. So I stopped playing squash because I was devastated. I was like, I reached the top and, and now I can't go anywhere kind of thing. But anyway, and then I still played, but just for fun. But it's always been, sports has always been there. I love working out. I enjoy, the slow torture that people think that it's when you go through intense workouts and stuff like that. I've just always been an active and hyper kid. I'm not a very as talkative as I am, but I enjoy, just moving around, just investing in my time, doing something and taking care of myself, my health and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much my life in a nutshell. And I love traveling around the world, so it helps a lot just bringing whatever I learned and just helped me grow as a person. And the fact that here we have so many different nationalities, so many different religions and stuff like that, it just brings it all together here.
It's kind of like a cultural hub.
Exactly, yeah. And seeing those different countries around the world and coming back here to be your source or your own kind of comfort zone, I've always enjoyed that. You can stay here, you can have your permanent job and life here, but you have that luxury of traveling everywhere you want to.
Yeah, because it's kind of in the middle of everywhere. So
exactly.
You travel easily, yeah.
And just the fact that you see so many different cultures or nationalities, and sometimes you meet someone you've never, for example, thought about going to their country before, but then they keep telling you about it. They show you pictures. You start learning about each other's, countries and life and whatnot. And all of a sudden next month you're there. You're traveling to that country, learning so much about it and just more places to go to kind of thing. Especially that I love traveling so much. To me, that's a big deal. Just knowing different people, seeing how different we can be is, I think that's intense.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, makes color sound awesome.
Yes, yeah.
But I totally agree. I think I came here around 11 years ago, and before that I used to live in Dubai.
Okay.
So I've had
similar
TCK, third culture kid kind of experience.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the same.
Yeah.
You just love being here because
exactly.
and to me it's really difficult to understand when I go back home and when they're not very receptive of other cultures, and it's very difficult for me to get that feeling.
Yeah. And you're considered an expat as well, or an outsider in your own country eventually.
Yeah.
Because people can tell that you haven't lived in the same country for a long time, whether you start losing the accent, the intense accent, your way of thinking, the inside jokes become a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because I feel you when I go back to Egypt or anywhere. Basically, people can tell right away. I don't have the intense Egyptian accent. No matter how hard I try, it just doesn't work. I mean, something sells me out. You can never put your finger on it, but people can tell you're just not from there, even if you try so hard,
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't mind it. I don't mind being an international kid. I love, Egypt and the States and here to me are all home.
Yeah.
I don't have to pick one. And that's the beauty of being an international kid. You just have 3 homes instead of 1,
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. But to me, culture is always going to be my home.
Exactly. That's why when people are like, how are you, for example, they thought when it's university time or when you graduate, you have to get out of there, a lot of people do.
Yeah,
But to me, it's why would you want to leave? Here it's nice. Especially, what makes the huge difference is how you live your life here.
Exactly.
And the company that you make. Friends make a huge difference. Although, you'll find them, they keep changing because people leave and go and come and go and all that. But, I mean, I don't mind making new friends. You know? I mean, you stick with some for a few years, then they have to leave or they decide to leave the country because they're not happy or work or whatever it is. But to me, it's I mean, it's sad that people keep leaving. That's the kind of the downside of being in, a country that's not
where you can't permanently settle
you
down.
don't permanently settle here. Nobody has a permanent residency, I would say, even when you grow older. But as long as you can stay here, you might as well enjoy it,
Yeah,
and make the best of it.
Because a lot of people sometimes complain about there's not much to do here, but then it's there is so much to do if you just
if you go to other countries, if you think about it, yes, maybe they have more greenery in that sense,
or
here,
culture. I mean,
here it's because they're trying to make it a bit more green, and it's kind of working. I mean, I like what they're doing with it, and a Bida Park, for example, Aspire and whatever, these little small projects that they're trying to work on to make the country a better place to live in and easier. But I mean, for example, they say, oh my gosh, it's so hot. Honestly, this summer was the best summer that passed since, I don't know, 20 years
at
maybe.
this point we disagree.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
But I really think that this year was sort of the best year that passed. I mean, in the past few years, summer was crazy hot, and it was for, let's say, 3-4 months. But this year, summer was a month and a half, maybe, out of the entire year. I think we're okay. I mean, that's why I'm not complaining.
I don't agree.
Really? No? Okay.
I think this was the worst summer I had here.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe because
weather-wise or just fun-wise, maybe.
No, weather-wise.
Okay. All right. Huge
but
difference.
It's also because I think I used to go to university all these years, and then I started coming to work, and I'm actually experiencing heat of the middle of the day kind of heat. Because summer in uni is you leave uni and then you're at home or chilling or traveling.
You're inside university the whole day.
Yeah, it's
you don't come out till night.
And there's this weird thing about EC universities that they're so cold.
Yes, freezing.
Yeah,
and
freezing.
we go out to defrost and come back in. It's why? If we are all freezing, obviously that should be a hint or a message, because we get so sick during the summer and you just have this continuous flu and cold throughout the year. It's winter because it's naturally cold, but because outside is cold, and then they make it so hot and warm inside.
Yeah.
And then when it's summer, instead of making it room temperature and normal, like there's this extreme temperature all the time. And you're just
and I'm pretty sure it's like
God.
EC is the only place where you'll see people wearing hoodies and sweaters in
Yes,
summer.
true. Because my parents were so confused. They're like, "Why are you going with a jacket? It's summertime." I'm like, "Trust me, it's for survival. Like I need it. It's either that or I become a popsicle and my brain freezes and my whole body just doesn't move." So we literally have to find like the nearest. You know how you get into the plane and people like show you the emergency doors and you have that whole like session of them telling you like emergency exits are this way and that way. So as soon as we get to class, I always have to check where the closest door is because I'm gonna run out mid-class just to like defrost for a few seconds and then come back in. Otherwise, I can't really focus. Like I'm just so focused on making my body temperature just come down a little. You know, you're just like I can't hear nothing. I just see people moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
Well, we drifted.
Yes, we definitely did. Sorry. Go on with your questions.
Let's get on with your life more.
Yes.
Okay, so so tell me a little bit more about petroleum engineering. Why did you get into that?
You'd be surprised actually. I was actually the smartest of kids back in school because people who know Shui Fat, it's one of the toughest schools ever. It pretty much is even if you're like in grade 1, it's like exams all the time, homework all the time, and they just don't give you a break. I mean, to them, it's like your life is dedicated to studying and only studying, like 24/7 kind of thing.
Well, I went to an Indian school, so I
Okay,
relate.
so maybe, you can relate a little bit.
Only memory-based, no understanding.
Exactly. So they weren't investing in us as, how should I say, like as a whole human.
It's like a capital,
They don't give you the whole experience for you to live as a child. I mean, I went to Shui Fat when I was in grade 7 onwards. Like I graduated from there, but it was just. It was too much. Like, if you want to be an A student, that means you have to be either a genius, a natural-born genius, or you have to have, like, crazy, like, memory, sort of photographic memory.
Or no social life.
Or no social life. I chose my social life, and I decided to balance it, especially that I love sports so much, and I was playing gymnastics back then, and basketball and all that. So I had to make time for that, too, and I was playing squash as well back then. So there was so much to do other than studying, and I didn't think, as important that it was for me to graduate and, go to the next, grade school and all that, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be this depressed child that's so, like, lifeless completely, because, that's what brings life to me, just me being all over the place, working and jumping around and playing sports and all that. So I felt like, I'm not going to let school get in the way just because I want to be an A student, which was never, like, a goal of my life, you know? Because it reached to a point where, because I used the same thing when I went to A&M because it was such a difficult school as well. And I wasn't so smart, let's say, in physics, not the brightest of kids in physics, but somehow ended up as an engineer. But, I was actually very good at, like, economics and business. So much. Yeah. And I was, like, an A student in those. Like, it was just natural for me. So, technically, I was like, I have to go to business school for sure and whatever. And it was, like, Carnegie Mellon, basically. And then, so I applied to both. But then it was sort of like, it was either business or petroleum engineering, because my parents didn't really give me the option of leaving the country, so it was within the realm of education.
Oh my God,
city,
I can
pretty
relate
much.
to everything you're saying.
Oh, really? Okay, perfect. So you can feel me. Basically, I stayed, and I'm like, okay, I'll either do both. And in high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to study, what my future was. I was just one of those kids that, like, doesn't know what do I do with my future. It was too soon for me of a decision to even, like, take for the rest of my life, I'm like, what if I change my mind? What do I choose it based on? I know this is like an oil and gas based country, and that's sort of why I went to petroleum engineering, because I'm like, then I would probably find a job in no time, and it'll be like the thriving, industry. And it is, and that's what I love about it, is that I really do enjoy being a petroleum engineer in that sense, just because I live in the right country. Let's say one of the greatest ones in that sense. But it was, back then, it wasn't really a very, I would say, conscious or informed decision. It was more of, okay, well, Carnegie Mellon, back then I felt like it was too much of a burden on my parents, especially there were 3 siblings. So I'm like, it's like double the price of A&M.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not really a hard worker in that sense. Like, I'm not going to be an A student. And I'm guessing if they're going to invest that much, they're going to expect that much, you know. And I didn't want that pressure. I wanted to be able to live my life and have the social life and not have the pressure of having to be an A student, you know, or just feel bad for not being an A student, that guilt kind of thing. I've always been that kind of kid that,
No,
you know,
I get
feels
it.
guilty
Yeah.
of not making my parents proud and whatever. And thank God I've had a good, you know, history of keeping my parents proud of me, and I didn't want to break that cycle, you know. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go to engineering since it's cheaper, and I got accepted to both universities. I'm like, I'll just go with that. And you know, little did I know that it was that difficult, and I just struggled through. But I'm like, I have to graduate. I have to do what I got to do, because eventually this is gonna be my career. You know, if I worked so hard and everything, then I might as well. And that's part of actually why I never left engineering in the sense. And I decided to invest in my passion as well. So instead of picking one, I just went with both. Which is obviously, I don't know if you noticed the trend here, but I never like to pick one thing. I try to bring in as much as I can into my
harmonious.
life. Yes, exactly. Just everything in synergy. But yeah, so.
Well, well, that sounds awesome. And then
Thank
you
you.
told me how you got into, you know, fitness training and stuff like that. But,
Yes.
you know, how were you able to convince yourself to do that, you know, like to, I mean, you're probably like 8 to 5 job at the end of the, same thing, like we have a 9 to 5 job here, and at the end of it, you want to just go and take care of yourself.
Yes.
Not actually go train like
Yes.
other people.
Yeah.
So how did you, you know?
See, that's where the difference kind of comes in, when your job doesn't really feel like a job and it's more of a passion. And I've always wanted to help people become fitter, healthier, and happier. So when I actually give the session, or, you know, I have a consultation session or anything like that, it's more of me trying to help them as a friend, let's say, or, you know, even as a stranger. Like, you try to get to a common ground where, you know, you're just trying to help that person. It's like someone coming to you in need of help. You don't take it as a job. You just help them, kind of thing, you know? So that's how I take it. And it's because it's something that I love as well, and they're asking me to help them with something that, you know, I've invested in, and I've taken courses in. And, you know, for me to go back to studying, like, as a person who hated studying, and for me to go back and take courses, and it was so intense because it was sort of like every day for 3 hours we had to take the course.
And you did that here?
Here, yeah. Through International Fitness Alliance. And they were pretty much the only ones here back then. I'm not sure if they have like other hubs that give those courses, but it was the only legitimate one that was here, pretty much. And I don't do like online courses that much. Like, I have to see the person and the professor and everything. So when I found them, I was like, that's it, I have to do it. You know, because a lot of people, because I've had that history of sports and they see me working out all the time and stuff, they always come in with questions. So before I become an official fitness instructor and then a personal trainer, people would always come naturally to ask me, like, you know, intense questions sometimes that I don't have the answer to, but it's like I just do it that way because I've known it my whole life. Like, maybe I don't have like a scientific justification, or like I want to help them but I don't have the exact answer or reasoning or anything like that. So I felt like people kind of just relied on me, or they wanted to lean on someone that they know. And I've had that community of people, and it's like the closest person is my mother. I mean, I've always wanted to help her for so long, and she's been trying to lose weight for so long, and I felt like I mean, she was part of the motivation that pushed me through to get to that point of I have to do this because I've seen her struggle for so long with her weight and all that, and I really wanted to make her happier, and I've seen how much has gotten to her, and I see obviously how much it gets to people, and it just makes them miserable, you know. It just takes up so much of their life when they could be investing their time and their mind in so much more, you know. so that's when basically I decided to just go on to that, and I didn't take it as a job. So that's part of what, after I'm done at 5 o'clock and put my PT cap on and become a different person, it's more of just me. It's as if like I'm just hanging out with someone, and especially if I know that person like from before. Let's say it can be a friend or somebody from a colleague from college back in the day or anything. Or for example, someone my husband coaches squash. For example, sometimes they want to learn
Does
squash.
he also have 2 jobs?
Yes, he does.
Wow.
Yeah, so he works in the QF and then he works part-time. So that's where as well it helps not feeling guilty of not being at home all the time. So like after I got married, I've only been married for 5 months now, but after we got married, we kind of decided we just tried to coincide our calendars a little bit so that we both continue doing our passion, but without basically getting in the way of our marriage. I would say we still need time for each other. We still need time for our own selves, like just separately even. So me time as well is very important. So although I have, let's say, 3 jobs now, with being a wife as my third, I always make it a point that no matter what, I'll always make time for me, because it does get to you eventually, like having 2 jobs, and then you have to take care of the house, you have to take care of your husband and all that. But I mean, I don't want something that I love to turn or backfire at me just because I'm like overdoing it or anything like that. So even then, I try to separate my social life, always keep time for that, and then time for work. So my weekend is my weekend. Like, I don't care if you're going to pay me a gazillion just to give you a session, but I make it a point that my weekend is my time, like Thursday, Friday, that's it. And then obviously like part of Saturday I give sessions too, but I make it a point, for example, Saturday, half the rest of the day I have it for me because I'm prepping for the rest of the week, then I have to start, 5 days of intense work and all that. And I mean, it's not always busy there. I mean, I don't know if you know about PTs in general, they're not busy throughout the year. It's like the gyms, people get all excited after Christmas and after New Year's, and this is my New Year's resolution, and
really?
Yes, yeah. So they do the same. They get usually New Year's resolution. People go like, we want to lose weight, we want to become fitter, and all that, and they're like, we have to find a personal trainer. So they get with you, they get so excited, and that's how a lot of gyms make their money. Actually, is that they get memberships of people who get so excited after New Year's. They start coming in a few sessions, and if they're lucky, maybe for a month or 2, and then they stop coming for the rest of the year until maybe summer, right before summer, when they need to get, into beach body shape and all that. So so there are these peaks, there are peak times throughout the year, so we're not busy like 24/7. And sometimes people travel, so they cancel. So I mean, I do get a break in between. It's not always so intense, like until 11 and 12 p.m. kind of thing, but I mean, I enjoy the rest of it. The little time that I have in between, or even when it's really busy, I do make sure that if, for example, like everyone is back from, vacation, and it's like intense classes one after the other, it does get to you sometimes. So I make it a point that, even if I have like an hour in between, to me a break would be either getting a massage or just working out for me, because, you have expectations too from clients, sort of, and it's a subconscious thing, right? Or even from your friends when you tell them you're a PT or whatever, or even to strangers. You have to have this perfect body, and some expect to have 6 packs and whatever. I'm like, I wish I had the time to make that, but I'm too busy like helping people have that, so you don't have as much time to take care of yourself. And that's what I try not to fall into. I try not to fall into that trap of just completely neglecting myself because I'm too busy helping others or working, my 8 to 5 job and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's it's pretty much it. In
Sounds
a nutshell.
overwhelming to me.
Yes, sometimes yes.
But like, for example, I'm just making up things in my head now. But like, what if you had a bad day at your petroleum engineering job, and then you had to go, train someone else? Like, how do you deal with? I'm pretty sure you have issues.
Yes, trust me, I do. And too many to even talk about. But I mean, just like any job, like especially that in my job, because my title is sales engineer / BD. So basically, I have to sort of be something like a project manager as well. And as a sales engineer, I deal with so many different people, so many different clients, and you kind of have to absorb different personalities. Some you're just like, wow, I didn't even know people like that existed, kind of thing. And sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it's not even just like from the outside world, but just from like within the company. You have to deal with so many different nationalities, different thinking, and that is not always the type of synergy that you're hoping for.
Yeah, and just like any job, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You have issues.
Yeah, so sometimes those issues kind of just blow up in your face, and you know, you have expectations from the client, and being the face of the company for the oil and gas, and being alone in that is kind of hard, just to keep a straight face all the time, but you have to. Like, I've trained myself, just because I've been in the industry for like about 5 or 6 years now. I've trained myself to kind of switch off, like once I'm done at 5, although obviously like I'm all stressed inside, and for example, like you're not able to meet a client's requirement and they had expectations, and you get the heat from the client, although it's not your fault, but you know, somebody in the team screwed up, so it's just going to backfire at you because you're basically the front of it, you know. So you get all the bullets, but you're like, but it's not my fault, you know. It's like you've tried so hard to make it happen, and then someone does something really stupid and just screws it all up, and you're just like, wow, we just missed this whole thing. And then you get the heat from the boss as well, like from my boss, and he'd be like, you know, I have targets to meet as well, and it's just a whole mess, you know, just of dealing with that. So that pressure and stress and all of that will always be there, but I try to just give myself, like on my way to my sessions, my PT sessions, like I try to listen to good music, something to just switch me off a little bit from all the drama that has happened in work, and just try to keep that straight face on, you know, and just try to just switch between jobs, you know. And from practice, I think I've managed to do that pretty well. I've mastered it almost. So I try to always separate things. Like, for example, even if I've had a fight with someone and I'm going out, you know, even if it's just something personal, or I've had a fight with, you know, my parents or whatever, you know, if I'm going out and meeting people, like, it's not their fault that I had a fight with them. Like, I don't want to spoil it for them, and I don't want to even spoil the few hours that I have to spend to enjoy my time, you know. So it's something that I've trained myself throughout the years, not just when I started working 2 jobs, but even ever since I was younger. I always felt like I had to hide, you know, whatever drama I had at home or anything like that. I had to hide it from the people, just so that even not being asked, like, you know, what's wrong, or, you know, or even getting a pity look or anything like that, I was always like, I can do this, I'm an independent girl, and no, I don't need anybody, and, you know, all of that. So, you know, I was always the strong, independent little girl that, you know, doesn't need anybody, and that comes just with the package, I guess. So it was part of just my personality to learn with, and do that. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Another very interesting question that I have is that you are in petroleum engineering, and that's a very male-dominated field.
Yes.
So tell us how do you deal with that, and what does your day look like? And when you hear male-dominated, you don't know exactly. You don't. I mean, personally, like, I'm in media, so we have women all around us, you know, all the time.
True. Yeah.
So I don't know what it would be to feel to be in your place, and what it would feel like.
Honestly, it's because I've gotten used to it as well. Maybe it's been so many years as well, that it doesn't bother me, I would say, as much, or affect me, just because I've learned how to deal with that gender all the time. Like, it hasn't become like something weird, for example, in any big meeting, that I'm the only girl. Like, before, it used to be like, oh my gosh, I'm the only girl. Now I'm just like, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the only girl, kind of thing. So I mentally prepare myself, you know, all the time, and it's become subconscious. Like, I know I'm the only girl, and if I find a girl, like, in the meeting, because now, like, even when I was in college, there were girls, you know, working in petroleum and as petroleum engineers and studying it, and it became less and less dominant than, obviously, like, back in the day. It's much more diverse now, but so a lot of girls do leave engineering and go to something else, and others, for example, they would work in a job, because petroleum engineering has 3 sectors. You have the drilling, that's the very, you know, kind of intense part of it where
Physical,
you have
yeah.
to be on site and you have to be on the rig, on the plant or whatever, and it's kind of like hands-on, you know. But others, like if you're working as, let's say, in the reservoir part of it or anything like that, you would have to, you stay in an office and you're just using softwares pretty much. So you don't really have to go to site except maybe once every blue moon, or sometimes you don't even have to, you know. And that's where a lot of girls go to, the desk job, you know. The tough ones end up going to the site for a little bit. But yeah, like, I mean, it's not, I guess I don't take it as, let's say, a challenge or something weird anymore. I just learned how to be the only girl. And sometimes I use it to my advantage, you know, like sometimes if you're like the rest of everybody else, all guys, and for example, your client is expecting a guy, and it's always Mr. Sahar in emails, you know, because people never expect that they're talking to a girl. I get that a lot. And then when they see a girl, they're like, and I'm like, I'm Sahar, by the way, not the secretary. Like, oh, you're Sahar, so you're not a mister. I'm like, nope, I really hope not. And then they're like, it kind of it breaks the ice faster.
Yeah.
And I take that to my advantage because people sometimes are automatically nicer to girls. You know, they give her that respect, especially living in the Middle East.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, they're not hard on you all the time, and they try to give you a break, and that's part of, you know, what I like is that you get that automatic respect. You know, like maybe with guys they do give them that sometimes, but it's not as easy maybe. Like maybe they're a little bit harder on them, or they're not as open, you know. But just because I've had those social skills in general, and I enjoy meeting new people, that helps me too. So part of developing those things in my personality and then having to invest in them as well and make sure that I work on it throughout my life to help with my career, just helps in dealing with any gender, really. And especially with men, you know. Like, for example, now in my office, I'm pretty much the only girl, you know. And there's that pressure of sometimes, I mean, in the back of people's mind, you would feel that, because you're the only girl, people think, like, you know, you're not going to be, like, serious, or you're not going to do so well.
Not smart enough. Or
Exactly. Although biologically and scientifically, we are pretty much smarter. I mean, whether they like it or not. So, I mean, I'm sorry to break the little bubble, but, I mean, it just is. But I never take it that way. I'm not a very competitive person in that sense at work, and that's part of what gives me that comfort, you know. I don't let people's subconscious expectations, or I try not to prove them right or wrong in anything. I just do my best, and I let my work speak for me. Like, I don't try so hard and be like, because I'm a girl, I have to prove that, you know, I'm so good, or I have to do double the work just to prove that I'm right or whatever. I just try not to do that because it puts so much stress on me, and it doesn't change anything. It's like, I'm going to do my job either way. Like, why would I put extra stress when my job is already stressful enough? And I don't need that kind of stress and negativity in general, you know. I mean, some people go like, because you're a girl and blah, blah, blah. Or you feel like, even with the clients, sometimes it depends on who you're dealing with. Sometimes you feel like they don't take you so seriously in the beginning until, for example, I tell them, because, for example, they think that I'm not an engineer originally. I'm just called a sales engineer, you know. Sometimes even the title of being sales engineer, or I would have to use like account manager or business development, you know, engineer or anything like that, just so the title itself as well sometimes pulls me back depending on who I'm dealing with, depending on their background, because it's like, I'm not coming to sell shampoo to you. I'm coming to sell, like, you know, mechanical and non-mechanical stuff in the oil and gas. So I must know what I'm talking about, and I have to be an engineer in order to understand these things. I mean, it's a prerequisite of being, you know, in that less of a technical field, but it's still as technical as it gets in that area. You know, you still have to understand what your client needs, you know, the terminology he uses and all that. So in the beginning, when I sit with clients, I make sure that they understand that, you know, by the way, because you kind of obviously introduce yourself and, you know, your background and everything. So I make sure that they know that I'm a petroleum engineer originally. And that's when you see there's a shift. They're like, so you're a petroleum engineer. And then you see the whole,
shock.
and exactly. And then the more you tell them, they're like, and I'm like, yep. And you see them just opening up and loosening up, and even more respect rises just as soon as you tell them you're an engineer, and they take you more seriously. You're not just some, like, airhead, coming to sell them something and trying to get their money. So they understand, like, I'm not here to sell you something and take your money and run, kind of thing. I'm here to help you.
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
legitimately
always,
here to help.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's either you want my help or you don't want it.
Yeah.
And that's how much it costs. So if you want it, awesome. Then let's work together. If you don't, I'm out. I'll find someone else, And that's kind of what helps as well when I come to deal with my work and how I approach it, is that I don't put unnecessary stress on myself, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but when you initially started working, were there any major challenges that you had to face, or like shocks that you had to?
Definitely.
I'm pretty sure just going to Texas and all of, even in your class, there must have been way more men than women. I haven't been through that because in journalism there's like 5 men in my class. That's it.
We actually used to be jealous of you guys. You're all girls and hanging out.
Yes.
And, it's all like, rainbows and roses.
No, it's all a facade.
No? No misconceptions?
No. but anyway, so, you must have had those initial challenges that you had to go through. Like, can you talk about some of them?
Yeah. So I started my career in Halliburton as a petroleum engineer. My title was an application engineer, so it was very technical. And it was more in the drill bits and services section, right? And that's where, and I was working like in the industrial area, which is a place I never imagined I would work in, but it was sort of like as soon as I graduated, like a few months later, any job that would pose itself, we were just like, jumping at it, because it was so difficult that time to find a job, especially for expats and for people who have no experience yet and just graduated. It's not as easy to find a job here. Like, most people would tell you, like, go somewhere else, get experience, and come back here. And it's like, but I graduated from here, and I lived my entire life here. Why would I go somewhere else and come back, So the first, and Halliburton obviously is an amazing company. So I jumped at the opportunity, although I hated the place, where I'd be working, because we're working pretty much in the yard, in the industrial area. So it's a very, hands-on job as well, because I had to be in the yard, and I had a very tough boss, and that was my first experience. It was sort of like traumatizing, I would say. It really did affect my first couple of years, because I had worked with him for 2 years before I left.
Yeah.
I had just a terrible boss. He was racist. Although he was from Texas, he was plain American, but that's the only reason we were like head on head, and basically everybody else was kind of like, because they hated him too, and my clients even hated him. They're like, don't bring him here to our offices. He was that bad, he was just one of those terrible black-hearted people who's out to get people to just make their lives miserable. And having that,
I hope he's not listening to this interview.
Yeah, honestly, I hope he does. I hope he hears this. But anyway, he got fired eventually, so it's okay. But I mean, just having that as your first experience out of college, and you're just like, oh my God,
is this what my rest?
Is this what being an engineer is gonna be like? No way, I'm out of here. But I knew it was just him, like just me being unlucky, or it was an experience. I don't consider it something that, like, one thing I do is that I never judge a whole career or judge I don't make a generalization about a specific thing because of one person. Like, if he's going to be a whatever person, then, it's because he's that bad. Because I've seen other good people in that position, but I was just faced with a terrible person, and I had to deal with him. Yeah. And it's sort of what taught me how to deal with bosses like this, but so that's why, like, any boss that I had in the 2 companies that I worked with later, to me, it was like a walk in the park. I'm like, oh, you're such a sweet boss. Like, I can't believe you're my boss, And I was so lucky to have such extremes, Like, I went from, like, a terrible boss who everybody hates, and he was just absolutely inappropriate. He was racist. He was everything. I mean, it was something like a nightmare. Like, I was miserable for 2 years, It's like, I didn't know it was because, like, am I being so sensitive because I'm a girl and this is new? Or is he just being really hard? And I would tell people, even, like, I would, throughout the 2 years, I would tell my parents, like, things that would happen, he would say. And even to people in the company, like I would make friends with and my friends, and I would tell them like stuff that would happen throughout, and nobody had ever told me like anything he does or says is normal. So I'm like, so it's not me. Like it's not me being like
Yeah.
this new kid or just graduating and
Yeah.
I'm being all like, you know, soft and whatever. Not at all. I'm as tough as it can get at that age, you know. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard, but it's just too extreme.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so that was my first experience in the engineering world. It wasn't very pleasant, but I did learn a lot. You know, I developed tough skin and thick skin, as they would say, and which you need to, you know, be in this industry. So, I mean, although it was a nightmare, but I'm grateful for the experience. You know, I grew as a person. I was able to deal with tough situations even better because I knew how to approach,
Yeah.
you know, terrible people like that. You just know where to have
Yeah,
them
yeah, you
stop.
learn from your
Yeah,
challenges.
exactly. And you don't let it get to you anymore.
Yeah.
You know where to, and you know when to put an end to it as well.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you don't let the conversation go beyond where it should basically. And then I moved on to Petrotech as a sales engineer in BD. And the good thing is that I worked directly with my boss and GM. So it was sort of like meeting higher management all the time. So that taught me how to deal even with people at very high levels in the oil and gas industry. Like we're meeting CEOs and GMs and COOs,
yeah.
and you're just like, I'm too young for this. But I mean, it helped me grow even faster, you know? So I was very grateful for that experience too. Like I felt that I was it was a privilege, which a lot of people, you know, are not able to be in that position. So I was very, you know, grateful for it, and I was very happy in my position to be able to get all that experience in so little time, and I was still young. You know? I mean, it had just been like the third year out of college, and you're already meeting all these like big wigs and all that. So it was very nice. And I had an amazing boss. He was always jolly and laughing and everything. So I loved working with him, and I loved working in Petrotech in general. It was sort of like a family, and it was nice, you know, just living that experience.
Yeah.
You're like, oh wow, there are normal companies and normal people that I can work with, kind of thing. So that was for a couple of years of my life as well after Halliburton, and then now I work in Burn. So I've been with them for about a year. So I just completed the year like a few weeks back. And I have a great boss as well and a great team. And the GM is very supportive as well. And once you have that top management being so supportive, it really helps. Even if like the stuff that I'm selling is so completely different than what I was doing in Petrotech, for example. Like you're dealing with generators and compressors and flat packs and just stuff that I've never heard of before, kind of thing, you know? Because it wasn't in my realm of, you know, responsibilities before. It was never something that I looked into. I mean, the oil and gas is ginormous, and there are so many tools and equipments and stuff that people use. You can never know everything, you know. So once I shifted, it was a major shift, just feeling that obviously you're starting from scratch again, and you have to learn all the equipment. You have to know where you basically would suggest the solution for the oil and gas clients and all that. So that was a challenge, but I loved it just because I had a good team. Once you have that backbone and you have a supportive boss and a GM, which I directly work with as well, I enjoyed working with them, and I still do. I mean, they give you that flexibility and trust, and once you have that, then that's it. You know that you can do your job without having that unnecessary stress, you know, or just having, you know, some messed up boss or anything like that. So to me, it's like, I mean, you can shout at me like once in a while if you want, like if you're angry or whatever, but I mean, it's never going to be as bad as I had it in the beginning, you know. But even then, being a girl, in that sense, it kind of, they're not as tough on you sometimes, you know. They always make sure that, or they know how to deal with a girl.
Yeah, especially in this region, it's like more respectful towards women.
Exactly.
So.
Although, like, my boss, for example, he's South African and my GM is Australian, but they've lived in the Middle East,
so
and they know. And even as men in general, I mean, you don't have to even be from the Middle East, but just as gentlemen, you know, they know how to deal with a lady, and you're not going to speak to her. Like, for example, especially, like, you know, because sometimes they curse a lot, especially in the oil and gas industry. people just curse their way out of life in general, you know. It's just a way of talking because it's a male-dominated industry. But little by little, especially the gentlemen, they make sure that they don't curse in front of us, or if they do by accident, like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry, whatever. So you feel like that respect, you know, like they give you attention, or the fact that you're there, you have your own kind of, you know, position in I mean, you're not just like another person or some other guy or whatever. They know that, you know, girls are not, you're not supposed to curse in front of them. I mean, some girls, I mean, they don't mind, they don't care. But to me, it actually means a lot when someone does not curse in front of me and they respect that I'm a girl, I'm not supposed to hear you curse, kind of thing, you know. But so my GM is like that, my boss is like that. I mean, they always respect my presence, you know. It gives me that comfort that, you know, well, thank you for, you know, respecting me. And it makes you want to give in more, you know. It makes me want to work harder because I have such a good team. And even, like, you know, if, I mean, some nationalities, for example, they have issues. It's just a culture thing. Like, they don't take orders from girls. I mean, I've learned that only when I was in the industry. I'm like, well, I'm kind of like the only one who can tell you what to do. As like an account manager, I have to manage. Hence me having to tell you what to do. And it's not like, you know, I say it in a bad way or give an order or whatever. Especially if it's in an email. You can't really tell my tone, you know? So don't assume I'm just giving you a bad tone. Especially that I say please. I always say the magic word, please. So, but sometimes people just have that issue, you know, and just taking orders from a girl. It's like... And then I hear my boss calling me. He's like, I had this person coming in raging in my office, and, you know, maybe you just take it down the line. I'm like, I was just firm. Like, I mean, if someone, or for another guy had given them the same email or given them the same call, they wouldn't have reacted that way, you know? So that's sort of a challenge. I mean, no matter what you do, it will still be there. Whether it's culture-wise, whether it's just industry-wise, gender-wise, or whatever, you'll always face some sort of challenge just because you're a girl, and we'll continue to prove that, you know, we're still going to be there no matter what.
But you deal with that with patience and just, you know. Like,
because I understand that it's not a common thing, especially if you're the only girl in the company. But then again, you're like, you live here, you work just like the rest of us. I am in the same position as my colleagues as sales engineers. So there should be no difference. Just because I'm a girl, like, I'll put a wig and a mustache if I need to, just so for you to not take it personal, you know? And what's surprising is that age in this doesn't even matter. It's just the fact that you're a girl, you know? They're like, why should I take orders from her? Well, this is my client, hence I have to ask you and tell you what to do, sort of. So, I mean, that's the only way we can get a job done. Like, I have to give sort of orders to people, course, you know, and I have to manage so many people to get just one job done. You know, there's just people coordination. You have to have them work in synergy. You have to make sure there's no miscommunication, because if one person gets it wrong, the whole thing can fall apart. You know?
Definitely.
So there's that stress that I have to deal with, but it's even more difficult when you have to deal with something that is not your fault, like being a girl, you know? It's like, but useless, your culture, it shouldn't be an issue because you're working in a professional organization. You should be able to work with everybody, with all genders, you know? Like, that shouldn't be something that you think of. Take the email as the email and not analyze who it's coming from, you know? But yeah, so that's pretty much the whole idea of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being such a boss woman.
Thank you. I try.
And thank you for coming on the show with us. I'm sure we learned a lot,
welcome.
especially
My
me,
pleasure.
like, just to know what it feels to be in the shoes of a person who, you know, that works in the petroleum industry. It's crazy. And
I will try to continue to be there for as long as I can.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show.
Welcome.
Do you want to tell
for having me?
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell our audiences where they can find you for your personal training, or just, you know, to get in touch with you for anything?
So I give a class, a full body tone it up class in the Four Seasons, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30, and you guys can follow me as well on Instagram on CISO_TIU. So that's SISO_TIU. And LinkedIn. I'm there on LinkedIn. You can find me anywhere. I'm always available. I'm very open to people getting in touch with me. So, you know, I'm out and about.
Okay, perfect. So you know where to reach out to her. Thank you so much for listening to us. And if you have any comments or suggestions, always reach out to us on our social media. And have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.